If you've been a part of my ecosystem for the last couple months, or maybe even the last couple days, you've probably gotten some shifts in your perspective on how to look at messaging and content. As you likely know, our program, New Generation Mastery, is opening up for enrollment. This is where we help transform your content and your messaging and possibly even you. So what I wanted to do is bring on one of our head coaches to talk about her journey going through our program and some of the common mistakes that we see students make with their messaging. I hope this conversation is transformative for you and helps you make a decision whether or not this program and if we are right for you to help transform your messaging and content. So keep on listening. Hi, I'm Brandon Lucero, and you're about to experience the new way to thrive in business, entrepreneurship, and life by leaning into who you are, what you love, and standing up for what you want to create. Get ready, because this is where we go against the grain, say no to outdated society norms, and we say yes to change in order to create a happier, more fulfilled world. Welcome to the New Generation Entrepreneur Podcast. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the New Generation Entrepreneur Podcast. Today we have a special episode lined up for you because we have a returning guest, but we're going to talk about something a little different, a little unique. So today we brought back actually our head coach inside of our mentorship and coaching program, Rachel Duffy, who is a conscious parenting coach. So Rachel, welcome back to the podcast again.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here again.
Yeah. Well, I'm excited. We're going to talk about something a little bit different than last time. So last time we talked about your business and what you do, and we talked about conscious parenting and a lot of really fun stuff. But today we're going to talk more about messaging, and there's two sides of what I want to talk about. Number one, obviously being our head coach, you've been through the program as a student. That's generally how we look for our coaches. And then number two, you've been a coach for us for a while now, and you've been able to work with the students on their messaging. So we're going to talk about both of those experiences. And I want to start off kind of like where you were before you even entered our ecosystem, because I know a lot of people listening might be in their beginning stages of like fixing their messaging and entering our ecosystem. So can you tell us a little bit about where you were in your business when you found us?
Absolutely. So when you entered my universe, I was what is called the Unheard Entrepreneur. I had literally every symptom of being an unheard entrepreneur. I was not getting any engagement. I couldn't attract the right people. I felt like I was speaking into the ether and it was crickets. And I couldn't figure out why, because I knew I was good at what I do. I knew I was getting really amazing results with my clients. But when it came to growing my audience, when it came to growing my impact, I felt like I was going around in circles. And, not to brag, but I'm a pretty bright person. I couldn't for the life of me figure this out. And I knew something was missing. I knew I needed guidance, and I didn't know where I would find that. And when I came across your content, it hooked me right away. Yeah. I immediately knew this is the guy. I have to learn more. I have to know more. I have to get to understand what he's talking about, because I intuitively felt this is going to be the thing that moves my business. Mm.
And what was it specifically? I know you said there was kind of like an intuition or just this feeling, but was there something specifically that you can remember that we said or we taught that really was just kind of like, okay, that makes sense? Did you have a moment like that?
I had many, and I still do. Mm. First, I think it was the sense I got that you really understood where I was, because the way you described the people you help, yeah. I could see myself in that unheard entrepreneur. I could really see myself. And A, it made me feel not alone. And B, it made me feel understood. And more importantly, it gave me the confidence that you could help me out of it, because you had done it for yourself and you had done it for other people. And I thought, okay, I have to try this.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. I mean, that's what we teach, right? Like understanding the people you help on such a deep level and specific level that when you talk, they get that automated response of like, okay, this is the person who knows what they're talking about. And it stems from experience or mastery over what they do. And I just think a lot of people don't do that inside their messaging. A lot of people stay very surface level. They stay very benefit focused. They stay very solution focused, which makes sense. I understand why people do that, but it's kind of a counterintuitive shift we have to make. And then when we can make that shift, then obviously our audience starts to experience a feeling very similar to what you're describing. So once you came into our ecosystem, what started to happen? Like, what were some of the shifts you had to make? What some kind of changes did you have to do? What was the experience like?
Yeah, it's been an evolution. I mean, and it still is. I think the first shift I had to make, which was such an eye-opening moment when you pointed this out to me, was that I had to transition from speaking about the solution from my standpoint as the person who already knows the solution to people's problems. I had to meet them where they were. Mm-hmm. They weren't at the solution. I was at the solution. Yeah. And I had to understand that in order to help people cross that bridge from where they are to where they want to get, I needed to first go to where they are and be with them there. Right. And then show them step by step how to get to where they want to be, which is where I am now.
Okay. Can you give an example of how are you communicating that before us or before coming into the ecosystem? Like, what was your communication like versus what is now? Like, give us an example of meeting them where they're at.
That's a great question. So one of the main things I talk about inside my content right now is the type of parent you turn into when you're triggered. And I break down 3 types of parent you might turn into when you're triggered, and I go into all the specific details of that, what that looks like exactly on the day-to-day basis. And then that communicates to people that I understand where they are right now. Before I went through the program, I would have immediately jumped to the solution. I would have said, you're triggered, this is what you need to do. And this is what you need to, these are the steps you have to go through in order to kind of break that down for yourself or move past it and work through it, etc. But you can't get there unless first you know that the person speaking to you is really going to take you through the solution you need. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So let me see if I can just explain it and tell me if this makes sense. It would be like, I'm just going to use the example because this is something we deal with inside of our household, is like getting the kids ready on time in the morning. And I mean, we have a 2-year-old, a 5-year-old, and an 8-year-old. So like the mornings are pretty chaotic. And usually my wife and I will take turns switching off, right? So like we have one person for 3 kids every morning, so the other person can sleep in. So it's just hard. It's a battle. They don't want to like listen, and then you're going to run late. So our mornings consist of like yelling at least twice at our kids, like sit down at the table. And then we might have an automated response of like, you guys never listen to me or something like that. The way you were communicating it before might have been like, look, you're triggered by your kids. That's why you yell, and you need to fix your triggers. Right. But me as the parent, if I haven't recognized that a trigger is the thing setting me off, I'm not going to be listening to you, because in my head, my subconscious go like, you're not getting triggered. Don't listen. You don't need to listen to this. It's not relevant to you. But what you're saying now is the switch you've made is you started off with that communication. You started off saying stuff like, look, there's a big problem right now, and you have this problem if you're yelling at your kids at least 2 times every morning to get them to eat their breakfast, and you're like constantly rushing out of the house to make sure they're on school on time. Your communication completely shifted, but what you're doing is you're meeting me where I'm at because you're describing an actual real problem. Now what happens is my brain goes, this is relevant to you. She's talking about you. Now you can say, let's talk about why this is happening. And one of the things you might not be recognizing is that you're triggered. But what the shift is that you met me where I am. What you met me where the conversation is, where the conversation is in my head, what I'm experiencing in real life versus just meeting me with the solution. So you had to kind of like bring me down that line. Is that a accurate description, statement, example?
That's 100% accurate. And also for me, it required me to slow down, to slow down my eagerness to share the solution with you. Mm-hmm. Because I'm not actually going to help you as much as I want to give you the solution. I can't help you if I've skipped over the steps and you're not even listening? So
Right.
first I had to recognize that I needed to slow down. And by saying something like, if I said to you, if you came across my content for the first time and I said, are you struggling to get the children to school on time every morning? Do you yell at least twice every morning as you're trying to, rush them through all the things they need to do? Are you dreading those mornings when you know you're by yourself with 3 kids trying to get everyone out the door on time? Right. If I got into the specifics of what your morning routine looks like when you're triggered, and I hit at least one thing that you're doing there, right away your attention is on me. Yeah. Okay, wait a minute. Yes, that is me. Then I would continue and get you to, and I diagnose a problem called the trigger loop. So now I've told you, do you have these symptoms? And if you said, yes, I have one of those at least, now I'm going to explain the problem. And I'm going to help you understand that you have this problem.
Right.
And only then can we get to talking about what might be the solution.
And Rachel, that's why you're one of our coaches. That is like perfect. It's like, yes, that's our language. That's how we just teach it. But yeah, that's exactly right. And what you're describing is what you actually experienced when you came into our ecosystem. You know, the way you described it was like you felt heard, or we understood your situation. We explained exactly what you're going through. And then you described a couple things that were really important, which was that you knew I was the person to help you because there was just a feeling of this person understands the situation so well. And when people are generalized, you don't get that feeling. You have to be convinced in order to go with them. And then when you have 10,000 people that are all generalized, how on earth are you supposed to determine who to go with? So you also said something really important that I want to break down is you talked about solution versus problems. And it sounds like what we're doing is we're actually starting with problems. And I think a lot of people don't realize that as a business owner, you're here to solve problems. Like we might realize that, like we're here to solve problems. But when people have problems with messaging, they're usually never clear on the specific problems they're solving for people. And that's actually where you want to start. You don't ever want to start at the solution. You want to start at where their problem is, explain their problem, explain why it's happening, because they don't know why it's happening. Otherwise, it wouldn't be happening. And then we start there when we bring them across. So what was the hardest thing for you to get through in that process? Because I know you said that was one of the hard, like meeting them where they're at was a big shift for you, but meeting them where they're at, like, was that an easy shift for you? If not, what was hard about it?
I think one thing that was hard was that because I was, and all of us entrepreneurs, because we have already gone through our own content and we're so deep in the content, it was very hard for me to put myself back in the shoes of the person who's at step 1. That really required conscious effort on my part to sit and think back. What was that like when I was in those shoes? What did that feel like? What do my clients experience on a daily basis? I really had to get out of my own head. I mean, because in my head, I'm only in solution mode. Because like you said, entrepreneurs solve problems and I'm a good problem solver. So I'm in the solution, not recognizing that people need to be connected with, seen and heard. Like, this is so meta because this is what I teach parents to do, to see and hear their children and connect with them, right? And here I am not doing that with my own audience because I couldn't even recognize I wasn't doing it.
Right.
And we do this as parents too, right? We're in solution mode, but we have to take a step back with our kids and in our messaging as entrepreneurs. That's why you and I have had this talk so many times about the parallels between how we parent and how we create messaging. So this was really hard for me to do. And honestly, I don't know if I would have done it in the time that I did it, had it not been for you consistently guiding me there, nudging me, and finally, like, you literally banged me over the head with it and said, Rachel, you are not at the pain point of your client. You are already in the solution. They're not there yet.
Yeah. It's overwhelming to them because
It is
they're
overwhelming.
just like, what are you talking about? And the example I use is like the weight loss coach.
Yeah.
And, as a weight loss coach, you might know that there's like subconscious habits that may even stem from like childhood trauma or whatever it is, like really deep stuff that could cause people to not stick to a diet or a workout plan or whatever. But when someone wants to lose weight, they're looking for a diet plan and a workout plan. They're not looking to heal trauma. But if you're coming at them like, let's go to your subconscious beliefs and your subconscious habits, let's explore trauma, they're like, no, dude, just give me a plan. I just need to stick to a plan. And then I just got to stay committed. Like that's where they're at. So that's where your conversation needs to be. And then if you meet them there, you can start to poke holes in it. You can start to shift their perspective a little bit and you can take them deeper. And that's kind of what you were doing a little bit. It was just coming out way too soon and you're using language and you're bringing up problems that they don't even realize are problems. Like their awareness is just not at that level yet. And go ahead.
I also, I mean, you may have noticed this about me. I have a tendency to overthink and overcomplicate.
We all do. We all do.
I'm laughing because literally, Brandon, you say this to me on a regular basis, and it's good because I need those reminders because it's just my default go-to.
Yeah.
But every time you've been able to kind of return me back to center, that helps me take yet another step forward in my own messaging and see what I haven't been seeing and kind of bring together what we talk about inside of our program as the seen and unseen elements of your messaging.
Yeah.
And I think for me as a student, there was huge impact. The program had huge impact on me in both seen and unseen ways. And I think it's easy for us to take a look at the seen. As entrepreneurs, that's what we focus on, right? Like I can look at the percentage of engagement and reach, and my thought reversal videos have over 100,000 views, and I can see and I can measure the growth in impact and engagement and how, and the growth in audience.
Right.
So those are kind of, those are easy to see. And also I can feel on myself, the way I speak, I can feel that I've made progress through the levels of messaging evolution.
Right.
I can see that I have made step by step. I can really see myself going through and improving on how I create demand, how I talk about problems, how I talk about solutions. How I can see it in the sign-up rates to my trainings. I can see it in the show-up rates to my trainings. So these are all things I can measure that very clearly show me how the program has impacted me.
Yeah.
But there is a whole other, maybe even bigger side that is invisible to the outside world that only I know.
Right.
And it's been even more impactful for me, at least.
Yeah. Well, it is, I think, more impact. That's the most impactful part of the program. And for people that don't understand the difference between the seen and the unseen, it's kind of like this. You might see someone who's like posting a video a day and they're growing really fast. And you look at that and you go, okay, cool. I'm going to post a video a day because that's what they're doing. That's the seen element. And that's what Rachel's referring to as far as like more show ups and stuff like more views, more engagement. Those are the seen things, right? But if you go and do a video a day, you may not grow like that person grows. Why? Because there's invisible things happening within that seen element. So within a video a day, there's like the way they communicate, the energy they bring, the way they talk. Like there's just so many invisible elements. And so in order to have really impactful messaging, we have to actually focus on both the visible and the invisible. And so some of the ways the invisible stuff might be affecting you, I would say the number one way is just a huge lack of clarity on what you even do. Like someone says, hey, Bobby, what do you do? And you can't answer that in like one sentence. That's a major lack of clarity. That's an invisible thing. It doesn't matter how many videos you post. Like it's probably not going to work for you. Another example might be if I asked you, what are the 3 very specific problems that you solve for people and you can't name them right off the bat? how on earth are you supposed to have clear messaging? Like these little invisible things that are like, you feel good, you're very clear, you understand the language, like how powerful you are, how do you show up? Like all of that stuff has a big influence on your messaging. And ironically, those are the things a lot of people don't want to focus on. They just want the strategy and the frameworks and all that stuff. And I'll
Yeah.
tell you, I was
And
one of
I'm
them.
guilty of that too. I mean, I had, and this is something I see our students do too, and I have a lot of compassion for it because I've been there.
Mm-hmm.
My thought was, I'm gonna sign up for the mentorship. I'm gonna binge watch the whole course,
Yeah.
and I'll fix my messaging, and then I'll be done.
Yeah.
That was my plan.
Yeah.
And it was a great plan.
How'd that turn out for you?
Turned out great because meanwhile, I've binge watched it so many times, I've lost count, literally. But yeah, that was another shift I had to make as a student to recognize invisible elements that you talk about all the time, that it is an evolution,
Yeah.
that it doesn't end, that there is no destination to get to.
Yeah.
And how that thinking, that mindset of I'm going to binge watch in order to fix my messaging so that I can impact millions by the end of next week, how that mindset on its own leaks your personal power to
Yeah.
something outside of you, as if where you are right now on your journey to mastering your messaging, as if that is not good enough.
Yeah.
So that has been a huge shift for me too, of recognizing that where I am is where I am. And although, yes, I am 100% committed and well on the path to mastering my messaging, not just my craft.
Right.
I'm mastering my messaging. There is no doubt in my mind I'm on that path. That path will not end. And I'm okay with that because every milestone I reach offers me an opportunity to look at things on a deeper level, to examine things from an angle I hadn't thought of before, because I am doing this work of mastering the messaging. That the evolution, the journey itself offers me more depth, which, I mean, if you know me, I'm a sucker for depth.
Yeah.
So that has been a huge shift that I've had to make, to just get comfy with where I am and sit back and enjoy this ride.
Well, I think that's one of the things that people don't realize is that it's a lifelong program, meaning we give you, like, when you buy, you're a customer of this program for life. You get lifetime access. Most people do that as a marketing ploy. Most people do that as like, hey, you get this course for life, like you should join. I do that, yes, for the marketing also, but really because it is a program that you're going to go through multiple times throughout your life. Like there is an evolution. You go through it once, it brings you to a certain level. That new level gives you new awareness. You see new things. Like you said, you're at a deep, like more depth. That gives you new perspective to go like, oh, well, now I can see this and this, and you keep improving on it. And that's why sometimes we get people go through the program and are like, I'm so committed, I'm going to do the entire course in a weekend. And I'm like, oh, yeah, okay, sorry. You go do that, but then let's come back and let's go through it again at like a slower pace and or with your new perspective now. Because when you go through it in a weekend, what you're really doing is you're looking more, here's the things to do without those invisible things. And something you said that you wanted to master your messaging, not necessarily master your craft.
Well, not just. I am both.
Yes. Right, both. Yes, exactly, both, because they go hand in hand. In order to master your messaging, you actually have to master your craft, because when you discover things that other people aren't discovering, you can teach things other people can't teach, which translates to powerful messaging. So let's transition the conversation a little bit to now focus on our students. So take the spotlight off you a little bit. And you're our head coach. So you obviously do a lot of coaching for us, and you help our coaches facilitate a lot of stuff as well. So what are some of the biggest mistakes that you see a lot of our students making coming in, or even concepts that are hard for them to grasp?
Yeah, so I think first of all, this mistake that I made too is the most common thing I see with students is being unaware of the fact that there are invisible elements that are impacting the way their messaging comes out. Because when you change who you are and you go through all the invisible elements that you teach inside the program, by definition, it changes how you communicate. You can't communicate. If you think of yourself, 10 years ago, you were a different person. And even if you're talking about the same concept, you're going to be saying it very differently because you have changed.
Can I ask a question or ask for an example? What do you mean? Like, give me an example of how that's played out for you or for a student or even me.
I actually see it with you.
Okay.
I think when I look at what you talk about in your messaging, so if we take, for example, the idea that you have to have two avatars, right? You talk about avatars and the gap between the avatars, and you speak about the fact that these avatars aren't just some fabricated, made up person.
Right.
They are either a previous version of you or your clients that you've worked with, right?
Yeah.
The way you talk about it today, which you and I have been working together for, I don't know, around 2 years, call it. In that time, you have changed. Your personal power has grown by quantum leaps. Your ability to know why you're doing what you're doing, your ability to discern between what a student needs, whether a student needs a push on some of the masculine, more seen elements versus whether a student needs a push on more of the feminine or invisible elements. You have gained mastery in your craft over the last 2 years. So when I hear you talk about avatars today, even though I have attended those trainings multiple times, but you speak differently. The energy, the way you show up is different, and people feel it. We focus on the words that are coming out of people's mouths, and sure, that's how we communicate, but there's so much more to communication than just the words coming out of your mouth.
That's really interesting because I knew that, but I didn't know that. Like, I hear you say it, I'm like, yeah, that makes sense, but it just wasn't in my awareness, I guess. Because the way I describe it is I tell people you want consistent messaging. And people are usually afraid to say the same thing over and over and over again. But saying the same thing over and over and over again allows you to master how to say it, number one. But number two is the way I described it was like, look, you can say one thing to a student today and you can say the exact same words to them 6 months and they will have grown within that 6 month period, which means they will experience your words differently. But what I never recognized until you just said it now was that you as the business owner will also grow. So the way you say it, the energy, the tone, sometimes the language you're using might shift too. So now you have two people completely growing essentially on paper. Again, we go to those visible elements. The visible elements say, oh, they're just saying the same thing, but they're not saying just the same thing. It's a completely different experience because both of you are growing at the same time, but it brings consistent messaging because you're still clear. Everyone's clear on what it is you do and your philosophies and your stuff. We don't have generalized messaging all over the place doing random topics. It's a very, very specific, clear thing that we do. But yeah, people will experience it two different ways. That was like a mind blowing moment for me. I'm like, oh, I never realized that before.
When you talked in the past and you've talked about thought reversals, right? About or you've talked about how-to content is not how to grow your audience, right? This has been a theme for you in your messaging.
Yeah.
And in the past, I felt that topic was more focused on, look at Gary Vee, look at Simon Sinek, look at all these other examples where you did a thought reversal and you showed, look, they're not giving you how to,
right?
Yet they're growing super fast. So Back then, when I heard it, I thought, yeah, you're right. That makes sense. But now, when you talk about it, you're not talking about it from the perspective of, even though you still bring up these same examples, you still
Yeah.
show the same examples, but in your energy, you're talking about it from a place of screw what everyone else is doing. You be a thought leader.
Right.
You create a legacy in your craft, in your industry. Be a pioneer in your space. Find things that no one else is doing. Understand things at levels that other people don't understand so that you can communicate that. And that's not how to. None of that is how to.
Right.
So the way you're talking about it today, the reason why you're saying how to content is not the way to grow has changed.
Right. Yeah. It totally has. And even the examples we use now are even different. Like we bring up different metaphors and analogies and stuff. But yeah, the reason behind it is a focus on mastery. And that comes with, working with over 1,000 students. I start to learn, I start to evolve. I start to, again, like you said, master, but I start to just understand why things are working at a deeper level. Like you asked me 2 years ago, why does this work? I could have given you an explanation. You ask me today, why does it work? My explanation goes way deeper now because I'm making more and more connections. And that's with everyone. That's with you, Rachel. That's with any person who comes into our program, is we help facilitate that environment for you to even be aware of that. Because if you're not even aware of like going deeper in the different levels or what mastery and evolution is, you could be doing it and not even know that it's happening. But when you know that it's happening, you just get so much more out of it.
Right. And you asked for like, what's an example from where I see students kind of not quite understanding the difference between certain concepts. A lot of times you'll say, don't let the external world control your messaging.
Yes.
And part of our program is about us uncovering the ways in which we have been letting the external world control our messaging, control our worldview, condition us. We've all been indoctrinated by multiple factors. So part of what you say is don't let the external control your message, but at the same time, meet your people where they are.
Yeah.
And I see people confusing these two things, because if I meet them where they are, people think that means I have to ask them what they want me to talk about.
Yeah.
And that's letting them control your message.
Such a great distinction. I'm glad you brought it up. There's two things that we teach that make effective messaging. And that's essentially, number one is like, don't let the external world control you. So uncovering what you want to say should come from you, not the external world, not the fear of haters. Just, this is what you're here to do.
Right.
But how we say it makes all the difference. And we want to learn, like, yes, we're going to create our own message, our own topics, our own whatever, our own philosophies. But then you have to be very mindful of how you're communicating it. And so I always use the example with my son, Will. I'm like, hey, if I want him to clean his room, I could say, Will, go clean your room now. And that's my message. Go clean your room now. Or I could say, Superman cleans his room in 5 minutes. Can you beat Superman? One's going to land way differently than the other. Same message, same overall objective, completely different communication styles. But I want to dive into the external world. And there was something, because this is where I was going to go anyways. I was thinking in my head, how do I ask a question to get her to go to external world? And then I hear you go to external world. I'm like, perfect. We're in sync. I love it. So what are some examples that you see the students doing that is the external world controlling their message? Because I believe that this is one of the biggest problems that people have when it comes to messaging. So can you give some examples of how this might manifest in our students?
Sure. Just last week, I ran into this. People thinking that they need to follow certain trends or that they need to play to the algorithm of whatever social media platform they're on in order to grow. Mm-hmm. So for me, like, I would never, I've been experimenting with Reels lately.
Right.
But I've been doing it not because I want to be, not because I want to master the algorithm of Instagram. I'm doing it because I have a message. I'm clear on that message. I'm going to experiment with using Reels to convey that message. And if it does well, great. And if it and I enjoy doing Reels, so it's a win-win.
Right.
And if it doesn't, screw it. I'm not going to do another reel ever. You
Right.
know, it's not about what is hot or trendy on any given platform. Like, I literally don't care
Right.
how I convey the message. I need to find the right message, and I need to find a way to say it that is in alignment with who I am.
Right. Yeah. That's a perfect example. The way I like to describe, you know me, I always bring in metaphors and all that stuff. It's what I hear you saying is like people will chase the Ferrari, right? That they want to get a car and they want to go fast and they want to go from point A to point Z as fast as they can. So like, I'm going to get a Ferrari. Well, the thing is if you put a 7-year-old in the Ferrari who doesn't know how to drive a car, that Ferrari's going nowhere. Doesn't matter how fast it is. You put a NASCAR driver in there, you're probably going to go really fast. And that's essentially what your messaging is what you're saying is like, who's driving the car? And a lot of people will let the external world, AKA algorithms and trends, control what they do, but that takes away from a focus of what you're actually saying. So that's a perfect example. Another one that I see all the time with students is what they used to do or what they did when they came into the program and holding on to that for way too long. Do you see that a lot? Did you experience that at all?
You know, if I experienced it personally,
Yeah.
it's a good question. I hadn't thought of it from that perspective. I like to think of myself as someone who is quick to detach when I notice that I'm attached to something. So it might take me a while to notice, but once I notice, I like to think of myself as someone who can release it quickly. But maybe that's not true. Maybe that's just how I think of myself.
Yeah, let's dig into that real quick. Right? Just kidding. But no, we do see it with students all the time where because of when we tell you not to let the external world control you, there's people that are like due for a pivot, for example. Like you're kind of not really excited by what you do anymore, or you're just not clear on what you want to do, or you have a business that's making money, but you're just not lit up by it anymore. Like to me, that's a clear example of, okay, we need to explore something. Like, I'm a perfect example. 2017, we had a $500,000 a year business. I didn't like it anymore. On paper, it was successful. On paper, I could have scaled it. I could have grown it, but I was miserable. I didn't like it anymore. I resented the students. And like, that's a clear sign that, okay, great. Your purpose is changing, your dharma, like move into your dharma. And this is something we teach inside the program, is that the most powerful messaging comes from people that are in alignment with what they should be doing. It's always the case. And so gave it all up. Yes, I went $40,000 in debt, but within 9 months from that point, I did $1 million in sales, more than doubled what we just did the year before. And that's what we want our students to get to, is like, just stop being controlled by what you've done in the past, what the world is telling you, what you went to school for, what your parents are telling you, what you're doing right now. And I see it all the time, is it's so hard sometimes to let go because it is scary. But
Right. And you're also attached. I know, at least for myself, I've pivoted multiple times, not so much in this current iteration of my online business. I've done mini pivots in that, but nothing giant. But I've pivoted. I mean, I used to be a divorce attorney, right? And I'm not anymore. That's a big pivot.
Right.
Part of the difficulty in releasing is the attachment that we all have to our own identity as a divorce attorney. Because saying I'm a divorce attorney means something. It means something to me, and it means something to other people.
Right.
Usually it means things related to a certain status, to a certain level of education, to a certain level of income. And I didn't want to let those go.
Right.
I didn't want to let it go.
Well, I think we as humans try to hoard and protect what we've earned.
Yeah.
And I went through the same thing when we switched from Video Forex to what we're doing now. So the new program is called New Generation Mastery, as you know. It essentially is the Video Forex program, but it's just the 2.0, but it's just a completely different name. And which means that the brand changed. The whole brand changed, the name changed, everything changed. The content is, and what we do, messaging, is still relatively the same. We just go deeper with it. And that was scary because I built up this story in my head of like, well, people know the name. They know Video 4X. It has some momentum. People are looking for it now. And I get into the fear of, well, what if no one recognizes what it is? If no one likes the name? What if no one wants whatever? So if I didn't have a team around me pushing us out of it, I might have just gone back to staying the same name, the same whatever. And that would have been an example of the external world controlling me. It's like the fear of people saying no, the fear of rejection, the fear of haters and all of that stuff.
And this goes back to another reason why you keep attracting people into your program, because you walk your talk. Yes, you were scared. What if, all the what ifs went through your mind, but you did it anyway. Yeah. You stayed in alignment with who you were because the current version of Brandon was ready to create a program on new generation mastery. Right. This current version had evolved, and that evolution had to come through in your work. So yes, you could have been out of integrity with yourself and said, no, I'm just going to stay with Video 4X because it's doing really well financially and I can continue scaling it and live happily ever after.
Right.
Or I could be in alignment with who I am and I can walk the talk, which you did. And we can loop back to this conversation in, I don't know, a year, 2 year, 3 years from now. I will bet you that you will have alchemized that evolution and growth into quantum leaps financially too.
Yeah. Well, we'll find out. We'll have to do part number 2 of this and see how it turns out. But I agree with you. There was something I was going to say and I forgot what it was. Oh yeah. So again, this was supposed to be at the students, not me, but we're just going to go with it now because we're here. But the thing I was going to bring up was going through those hard times, those pivots and those changes. You said walking the talk. That is also a messaging tactic. It's a messaging tool that we need. And one of the reasons why is because now I've gone through it. I understand the fears. I understand the stories you're going to create. Not only does it allow me to communicate that a little bit more to the students and get more specific, but it also deepens my compassion for our students. Because if I didn't have to go through that, it's very easy to say like, look, Bobby, I don't know why all the examples are Bobby, but whatever. Look, Bobby, just go through it because this is what you need to do. But now having gone through it, I understand, okay, well, Bobby's having this fear, he's having this fear. So I can go to him and go like, Bobby, look it. I know that you're probably experiencing this, this, and that. And if you just want to like sit in that for a little bit, go ahead and do that. But I'm ready for you when you're coming out the other side. And we have to make this step if you want to move forward to something better. And I can just talk and communicate and hold the space, you know, as communicators and people that are creating transformations in people. And by the way, if you're solving someone's problem, you're creating a transformation, but holding a space for them to create that transformation in your messaging and content is something that's so overlooked by people. But again, I only think you can get to that compassion if you've gone through it yourself.
So I have a slightly different outlook on that specific piece of compassion.
Okay.
I think it's not enough to have gone through it yourself in order to open up compassion. Going through it yourself gives you the experience, it gives you the language, it gives you the understanding of the specific pain points.
Yeah.
I don't think it necessarily gives you compassion.
Okay.
I think that again, back to the invisible elements, it is you doing the work of remembering who you are, of doing the work of sitting in silence, of healing what needs to be healed. That is what gives you the compassion. Because you cannot extend compassion towards another person more than you've extended it towards yourself.
So there's Rachel going to the depths again. I love it. But it kind of reminds me of what I say a little bit, which is that experience alone doesn't give you mastery, because experience only guarantees that you're going to fail. Mastery is what gives you the solution, because you don't just understand it one way, you understand it, the solution like 5 or 10 different ways. Kind of similar, but let's bring it back to the students as we wrap up this episode. Just go through a couple more of the mistakes. And so hopefully for those of you listening, hopefully we didn't go too deep with you, but hopefully what you're starting to understand is if we really want to master your messaging, this program will be a little bit more than just frameworks. It's going to be a little bit more than just giving you language patterns. Those things are important, but we will kind of force you to like figure out the depth of your message. And we want that because when I want you to speak and I want your audience to automatically go, that's the person. that's the person who knows it. And I want that I want to work with. That's the person that I love. That's the person that I trust. That's the person that knows it more than everyone else. So we have to go to those steps. But going back to the students, Rachel, what are like one or two more mistakes that you see them making that will have to get fixed in order for their messaging to really take off and their content to take off?
I think one thing that students are practicing inside of our program is the ability to discern what's missing. Do I need another tactic strategy framework? Then there are modules in the program to go through that. Or is what I'm missing something deeper, something invisible behind the scenes? And that ability to kind of look at the situation from this holistic perspective of both masculine, feminine energies, seen and unseen elements, is something that we teach our students that I think before they come into the program, they're not doing because they're not even aware that there are invisible elements. But even once they become aware, it requires you're required to kind of gain some level of mastery with the help of coaches and mentors to discern what is going on in this moment. Where do I need to focus my effort?
Right. Yeah, I can see that 100%. And even if you can't like discern it, having the coaches there and other people who are going through the same thing can point it out. And then you instantly are like, got it. I know what to do. So there's that whole environment where that is facilitated pretty easily.
And I'm glad you brought up the environment. This is something I can say this as the head coach that we work on deliberately and intentionally inside the coaches group. Mm-hmm. So we have really good understanding of where, specifically with the mentorship students, because we work one-on-one with them, we really understand where they are on their journey so that we can support them. And we do this, all of us together. The coaches are super, we really look at each student from different perspectives and what does this student need right now? And how do we show them, how do we point them in the right direction for where they are in their journey? Right. So we really take that approach of looking at things holistically and supporting the students at that level.
And it's never telling them what to do, which is what I love. So like sometimes in that Slack channel, the coaches, like there's someone who's just not getting it or there's something they're not seeing. It really is a discussion of, okay, here's what they're not seeing. What do we do? What do we not do? How do we guide? What are they missing? And then we work together to facilitate that for them, which I love. One last thing before we wrap up that I think also that a lot of students have to fix is that our messaging, like you said, is focused a lot on how to, is not how to grow an audience. But that's not like, we've kind of adjusted it and pulled back a little bit because I was very aggressive with it like 3 or 4 years ago of like, how to is not how to do this. But there are people that use how to and do it really well. And we still want it. So I pulled it back and like, look, doing how to 100% of the time is most likely going to cause you problems than grow your business. So people come in the program and they want to just rush a ton of thought reversals, a ton of connection, and they kind of neglect the education, but we need the education. So that's problem number one. Problem number two is that when they go to do the information, they just continue doing the same information style they've always done before. So what they do is they'll go like, okay, Brandon told me not to do information-based videos 100% of the time, so I'm just going to focus on thought versus connection. Now I'm going to throw in my 50% or 25% of information videos. But the thing is, they don't change how they're delivering information. And so we want to shift that as well. Talk about that. What are some of the common mistakes that people make when they go to deliver a tutorial or how-to video or information on a webinar or something?
So first of all, I want to say I feel called out because I literally had this conversation in my own head just a week ago where I looked at my content and I realized I haven't done educational content at the top of my funnel in months.
Yeah.
I've been only doing thought reversals
Yep.
and some connection, and I completely ignored the fact that people do still need some what to do. So I made this exact mistake that you just brought up.
Yeah, and I have too. That's the reason why I know that it's a mistake because I did it for years. Like I'll let you answer, but I'm just going to interrupt you real quick. when we first started doing thought reversals, that's all I did. And we got really fast traction, and then it plateaued, and then it started to come down. And I was like, what is going on? I'm doing thought reversals. And it's like, people don't want their perspective shifted every time they listen to you on the internet. Yeah. So you need to actually, again, there's multiple ways to add value. Give them all the different ways, not just one.
Right. So I had to catch myself and kind of throw in a little bit of that back to educational. But to your point, I have to do the educational content differently because I have to recognize now it's part of an ecosystem, right? It's not just spaghetti thrown at the wall, which is what I was doing before. Now it's very intentional. So I'm not randomly picking something to teach. I'm teaching a topic that fits in with the rest of my ecosystem. So that's number one. And number two, when I'm talking about, you cannot take decades of experience and shrink them into a 30-second reel or a 15-minute video on IGTV. You just can't.
Right.
So as you are teaching what to do, you have to simultaneously understand that you need to be creating demand for all the other what to do's that you haven't talked about in this particular piece of content.
Right. That's exactly what I wrote down is learning how to create demand and understanding every single piece of content that you put out plays a role within your ecosystem. And the longer someone sits in your ecosystem, they experience more of these elements. So what we do inside the program is we help you define what are all of these messaging elements that someone needs to experience in order to like you, to trust you, to want what you sell, all of that stuff. There's I forget how many elements there is, but there's like call that 11 different elements. And like you said, those have to be delivered through a series of content, which would be podcast episodes, images, captions, ads, emails, whatever. It doesn't matter. Sales mechanisms, doesn't matter. We always want to be delivering that. So if you're just going to go deliver a piece of information, well, it doesn't really do you any good if it doesn't fit into that ecosystem. And so we want everything working together. It's kind of like, I don't know, gears on a car, I guess, or whatever. It's like everything needs to fit working together. What has it been? Go ahead.
Sorry. And also understanding that when we say you need to create demand, I think for a long time I didn't understand this piece, that creating demand is selling, which is not pitching.
Yeah.
The difference between selling and pitching, when you pointed that out to me, I was like, oh, I thought they were synonyms.
Yeah. Well, I'll be honest with you. I didn't realize there was a difference between the two until like 30 or 40 days ago. Like when we were going through our runway for this launch, and Taylor said something like, well, let's do this thing about offers. I'm like, I don't want to talk about offers. I'm like, I don't want to talk about how to make an offer, how to do this, how to do that. And she's like, no, you talk about your unique solution. And I realized, oh, it's about positioning and offers. And then it led me down this path of like, oh my God, there's a difference between pitching and selling. And what we've been doing is teaching people how to sell while adding value in their content. And I was like, man, that was big. So I didn't even realize that for like 30 or 40 days. And I guess that whole process is another example of evolution, like putting things into action, and you make these discoveries that other people aren't making, which allows you to teach things that other people aren't teaching.
Right.
So just for anyone who doesn't know the difference, what is the difference?
So pitching is really like when you get into the nitty gritty of your program, like this is how long it takes. These are the modules. This is what you're going to get. These are the bonuses, which is great. Do that. But you have to understand that when you get to the point of saying that, people are already sold.
Yeah, they should be. Yeah.
People should be already sold, because not to hurt anyone's feelings, nobody cares. Nobody cares about your goddamn offer. Nobody cares about the modules and how beautiful and the production and how many worksheets. And sure, there's a way to craft that pitch that it should kind of finish the deal, close the deal. Great. Yeah, you should do that. But you should also understand that selling is something you are doing at every given moment, all the time. All the time you are selling. You are not pitching all the time.
Right. I don't think anyone's ever gone to a sales page and been like, I'm not sold. Wait a minute. Hold on. there's 10 worksheets instead of 5, I'm sold.
Yeah, I'll take it.
I'll take it now. Or like, hey, they have one. I thought they're gonna have 4 modules, but they got 5. I'm in. Like that. I'm sorry, guys, but that doesn't happen. And so, what are some of the ways that we teach demand creation inside of information-based content?
First of all, it's understanding, giving the audience the perspective that you are teaching one slice out of many other angles, right? You're teaching one way to solve this problem, but you go into 20 other ways. Like you just said this 5 minutes ago, there are 11 elements inside our program. We haven't talked about all of that.
Right.
That's creating demand, right? And it's speaking to the subconscious, learning how to speak to the subconscious. What are the ways that I can stop the automation in someone's mind?
Yes.
Because we are all subject to automation. Brains are supposed to work in automation. It's normal for that to be the way we're wired, but we have to know how to interrupt that.
Yeah.
As communicators, as people with a message, as entrepreneurs who are mastering their messaging, we have to know that this is how the brain works. There is automation. I can't fight the fact that there's automation, but I can stop it.
Yeah. Okay. There's a lot I want to dissect there. So we're going to keep going. We're going to go deeper again. So the one thing you said is that there's more than what I'm just teaching you. And I don't think a lot of people do that. Like if you're going to do a how-to video on something, obviously it's not going to be your full program. Make them aware of that. So they're coming to a how-to video to solve one problem, but let them know this is problem number 2 of actually 50. And if they want all 50 problems solved, there's something bigger. So like what I said is, hey, I'm going to give you one thing right now, but just there's 11 language patterns or 11 elements or whatever. Very simple language that when you teach, just let them know like, this is what you're getting and here's what you need. So let's move in. But you said something about speaking to the subconscious, and I want to be careful with it. And the reason why is that sometimes when I tell people, yeah, we need to speak to the subconscious, every once in a while we get somebody that's like, that's manipulative. I don't know if that's ethical, blah, 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 blah. So I just want to kind of put a pin in that right now and just make a statement on this is that, look, whether or not you listen to me, you're going to be speaking to someone's subconscious. So speaking to someone's subconscious can be unintentional or intentional. It's your choice. It's your choice on how you want to do it because it's happening whether or not you like it. And a perfect example of that is when you're listening to this podcast episode right now, you've already made a decision of staying or not staying. And if you're here, then you've made a decision to stay. You didn't logically think about, is this good? Is it bad? Do I want to stay? Do I not want to stay? It was a feeling that was evoked, but it was an automated response to you experiencing what we've been talking about. You've experienced us talking. There was an automated response that evoked some kind of emotion, and that emotion told you to stay or to not stay. That's what your audience is doing to you. And they're doing it to you every single day. You do it when you read a book, right? You read a book, you automatically make a decision. It's good, bad. Your spouse says something to you, you automatically respond. You don't think about it in most cases. So you have to understand that is that when we craft messaging, you have to understand that you're speaking to an audience that's going to make an automated response of how to feel about your content, whether or not you're intentional with what you're saying. That's just going to happen. So what we're saying is let's be intentional with it and communicate properly so you can evoke the emotion and the automated response that you want. And that's the biggest problem most people have is they speak and they feel like people just don't understand what it is I do. Why? Because you have a disconnection between what you're saying and their automated response. Is that a fair statement?
I think it's absolutely a fair statement. And to your point about being manipulative or not manipulative, that goes back to your intention as the person carrying the message.
Right.
My intention with my message is to release people from their suffering, is to free them from the matrix, is to bring them to a place where they are more empowered, where they're powerful, where they're grounded, where their life is better.
Right.
So by definition, me stopping their automation is helping them.
Right.
And in the end, life is choice. People have a choice. I am not some mastermind, I don't know, mind controlling person, right?
Right.
I can stop the scroll in your mind, but ultimately the choice, and I can show you the door, and I can tell you what's on the other side of that door. But it's on you to walk through the door. I'm not forcing anybody to do anything.
Right. Everything, like you said, everything is choice. And that's why we don't have 100% conversion rates on our stuff, because people still hear it and they choose like, yeah, this person's not right for me. And I lean into my values. I lean into my beliefs. I lean into who I am. And some people still choose to leave. And if it was like this unethical, manipulative thing, then people wouldn't choose to leave. So, going even further onto that is that I will say that it can be used unethically, like anything can be. And if you're just going to get up there and you like get into our program and use our language patterns and straight up lie to people to trick them into buying, that's manipulative. That's unethical. But if you're someone who's here to make some kind of change, make some kind of transformation, you owe it to your audience to be able to communicate in a way that they understand clearly, this is the person that can help me with this transformation. This is what I need. I recognize these problems. And again, it just comes down to communication. If you go to like a relationship therapist for your marriage or your relationship or whatever, one of the biggest things they focus on is proper communication. And that's essentially at the end of the day of what we're talking about, is I just teach people how to communicate in a way that properly describes the transformation people are going to get, the benefits, the solutions, and all of that stuff. Okay. We started off this conversation by talking about how to create demand. We talked about like the one and more method, like where's one thing here. Is there anything else that you would say, like maybe one or two more quick tips that people can use to start creating a little bit more demand when delivering information?
I think oftentimes we get caught up thinking that we need to add value, we need to add teaching. And oftentimes, when we're actually removing a block or removing a limiting belief that someone has, that is the value, that is what opens their eyes to the fact, and it creates an appetite, if you will, for more. Because when I can show someone, look, these are the symptoms, this is the pain that you're experiencing. And you're experiencing it because you've been completely unaware of this thing. I haven't taught you anything.
Right.
I've just shown you why you've been making a mistake. You've been completely oblivious. Obvious, if you knew why you were making the mistake, you wouldn't be making the mistake.
Right.
Nobody is doing this on purpose to create their own suffering, right?
Right.
So when you can unveil what is behind a person's pain, suffering, discomfort, you automatically create an interest, a curiosity for that person to learn more. And since you're the person who uncovered this thing, they want to learn it from you.
Right. Raising their awareness, basically. So if someone is hitting their toe with a hammer and they don't realize they're doing that, and they're like, hey, I need you to stop making my toe hurt. And you raise their awareness of like, hey, you're hitting your toe with a hammer. They stop doing it. They'd be like, oh, great, it stopped, but I still need to fix the pain that's now there. Right. Who are they going to go to? They're going to go to you because you're there and you just brought this level of awareness to them. Maybe not the best analogy, but hopefully you guys get the point. And hopefully just through this conversation, you're starting to see how much really goes into messaging. And, we did go a little deep, and I know we did it at the risk of possibly overwhelming you. And if you are hopefully you're feeling excited, and hopefully you're like, I want to learn this stuff. I need to fix my messaging. But if you are the person who's feeling a little bit overwhelmed, the thing I want to tell you is that you don't need to do everything right off the bat. This happens in steps, and it happens in like Rachel said, in evolution, and happens at different levels. And even learning 10% of what's in the program and also unlearning 10% of what you're doing that's causing the problems will be enough to make a significant difference inside of your business. And let's just face it, what you're doing right now is likely what you've been doing for the last 6 months. And if those results that you've been getting in the last 6 months aren't the results that you want, doing more of it isn't going to change. Sometimes we need a complete shift in the paradigm of how we're operating and how we're creating stuff in order to see significant results, even if it's a 10% of gaining something and a 10% of unlearning mistakes. That's enough to see quantum leaps. And over time, when you start to learn all this stuff and you master it, it'll literally not only transform your program, it'll transform how you communicate in any business moving forward. So like when I go and open up another business, which I want to do, it's our coffee shop, I'm going to be able to outmarket, outcommunicate, and outmaneuver other coffee shops. When I want to start another business, like if my wife and I ever start a business, I'll be able to outmaneuver it. Why? Because I understand the skill sets. I understand what we need to do, the language patterns, and I'm able to do that. So this isn't just going to fix the current business. It's going to fix anything you touch. And fair warning, it might even help your relationships because it's all about communication, and you're going to be such a better communicator with your kids, with your friends, with your spouse. So Rachel, any last words before we wrap up?
No, I just want to say a personal thank you to you, Brandon, for living your Dharma and creating this program and helping me and thousands of others like me. So thank you.
Thank you. It's just what I'm here to do. I'm just glad I found my Dharma. Like, I'm glad I made the pivot, and I'm glad I'm not teaching Facebook ads and YouTube anymore. Because I would be miserable, and I just love what I do. And I love that I get to work with amazing people like you. So thank you for being here. I appreciate it. And, if you guys are interested in joining, Cart is opening up soon, or it may actually be open now. I don't remember. Taylor's going to kill me, but I don't remember when this episode is being released. She probably told me 10 times, but, just go look in our Facebook group and you'll know when Cart is opening, closing. But hopefully you are able to join us inside that program, because this is my Dharma. This is my purpose. Myself, Rachel, and our other coaches are waiting to help you guys out, transform your messaging, transform your business, transform your content. So hopefully we'll see you on the inside. And if you have any questions, reach out to us in the Facebook group. Take care, everyone. Hey guys, thank you so much for checking out another episode of the New Generation Entrepreneur Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, go below, hit the subscribe button, and make sure you click on that bell icon and get notified every time we drop a new episode. Now, if you're looking for the show notes, we have them linked underneath this video, as well as our social media handles and some links to free training and offers that we drop from time to time to help you guys even further. So go check those out if you're interested, and thank you so much for tuning in to the New Generation Entrepreneur Podcast.